Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. I guess there are people joining from different parts of the world, and welcome to this webinar session, which is the second edition of the Inclusion for All Dialogues, and it'll be the first virtual edition. My name, as you can see, is Chinasa Collins Igwe, and I'm the moderator for this webinar session, and I'm also the advocacy lead at EFINA. I would just like to do a quick introduction of what Inclusion for All Dialogues is about and give a context for the conversation that we'll be having today, starting with what Inclusion for All Dialogues is about. So Inclusion is an on-demand, issues-based and evidence-backed multi-stakeholder convening platform that seeks to inform solutions to the barriers that prevents digital financial inclusion of the most vulnerable groups in Nigeria. It's essentially one of the advocacy tools that Inclusion for All initiative as an advocacy platform offers as a way to raise awareness and to discuss, topical issues that are relevant to our campaign issues. So as another Women's Month commemoration draws to a close with the theme Inspire Inclusion, we've decided to basically have a discussion and explore and unpack the state of women's financial access in today's economy. And I believe it's a very important conversation given the current situation of the economy that we're all aware of. So there's double-digit inflation that doesn't seem to be stabilizing, it's increasing. Yesterday, the Monetary Policy Committee raised rates again, so we have increased cost of borrowing, there's the food crisis, and just generally a business environment that just gets more challenging by the day. Our aim with this discussion is to do four things. First, increase awareness about the current status of women's financial access in Nigeria. Second is to identify and understand some of the specific barriers and challenges that hinder women's access to financial services in Nigeria. The third is to share insights, research findings, best practices related to promoting women's financial inclusion. And finally, to consider policy or regulatory reforms that are needed to address the gender disparities in providing formal financial services and to promote women's economic empowerment. And to do that, as we always do, and given the nature of this convening, it's multi-stakeholder, I have three guests from different backgrounds and also from different segments within the financial inclusion or even outside of the financial inclusion ecosystem to talk about this. First is, and as I introduce them, I will just bring them up to join me. First is Amina Bakari, a project manager at Teasy Pay. She has a proven track record of implementing sustainable solutions to drive socioeconomic challenges in diverse communities, especially hard-to-reach areas. She is passionate about creating positive change and fostering inclusive development, especially women empowerment. Second is Norah Igwe. She's a program manager at EFINA, that's Enhancing Financial Innovation and Access. She's passionate about developing and implementing innovative programs that deepen access and drive usage among the unbanked and underbanked populations. She's also a strong advocate for enabling resilient livelihoods of marginalized groups in Nigeria, especially women. And finally, last not the least, is our guest from the World Bank, Yetunde, who is a social development consultant at the World Bank with vast experience in various social development issues, including women's economic empowerment. She's co-led a national policy dialogue on women's economic empowerment. Welcome, ladies. Welcome. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join this very important, especially as we commemorate another international talking about inspiring inclusion. And I'm looking forward to very honest and also insightful conversations because three of you would come to this topic with different lenses and through your experiences and in terms of the work that you do and some of the initiatives that you've been a part of or you've led. But the way I'd like to start this, which I think is contextual, is to start with Norah from EFINA. And the reason for that is EFINA has the Access to Finance survey data that tells us a lot about the financial inclusion landscape. And recent one was released released last year, 2023. In December, we published the high level or the highlights of the reports. The full reports will be published in the coming month. And so, according to that survey, the Access to Finance 2023 survey, formal financial inclusion has risen 56% in 2020 to 64% in 2023, which is fantastic. So we're recording progress. Things are looking up. However, there's still a problem. So 40 million adults, mostly women, remain excluded. And so what I'd like Norah to touch on is, first of all, from just a women's economic empowerment point of view, what is women economic empowerment? What does the data telling us about that in the 2023 A2F survey, given that we're talking about women's access in the current economic climate?
All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity. So it's good to be here. First of all, before I answer the question, I'd just like to say kudos to the I4ALL team. There's been a lot of work put in, fighting for an inclusive financial system that works better for all. So I want to say well done to you guys. Now, going over to the question. The definition of women's economic empowerment I'd like to adopt is one that's used by the International Center for Research on Women, and is also adopted by EFINA as well. So we say a woman is economically empowered when she has access to skills, has access to resources and institutions she needs to succeed, right? As well as the power to make and act on economic decisions. And that includes having control of personal and household resources. Now, looking into the EFINA Access to Financial Services in Nigeria 2023 data, right? Some of the insights that we can pull out, there are quite a lot of insights, so I've just decided to speak to some. Looking at access to skills, from the data, we'll be looking at indicators like education levels. We'll be looking at data pointing to literacy levels, financial literacy, digital literacy levels, and the likes. So in terms of education, what we're looking at, Nigerian adults above 18 years of age, right, who do not have any education at all. Women, of course, we have 14% for women and 8% for males. So the women are more affected. Looking again at incomplete secondary schools, so for those Nigerian adults who were not able to complete their secondary school education, again we see women at 32% and their male counterparts at 26%. And if we keep looking up the ladder, right, looking at bachelor's degree, university degree, even the master's and PhD, the gap even widens further between with the female gender, lagging behind, right? Also, again, in terms of financial literacy and digital literacy, right, the story is not different. We see that women tend to be less aware of financial options that are available to them. Looking at access to resources, under that bracket, we try to look at ownership of assets. Again, from the data, we see that when it comes to owning agricultural land, women are at 17% compared to their male counterparts at 51%. Owning a house, the house where they reside, it's 11% for women compared to 47% for their male counterparts. Also, in terms of mobile phone ownership, we see that for women again is at 74% compared to men at 7%. And also, if you now checking the cadre of phones, basic smartphones, feature phones, and even smartphones, again we see the gap widen. Looking at participation in economic activities, right, we see that 56% of women, that's Nigerian adults, female Nigerian adults who are working, 56% of them are earning 35,000 naira monthly income compared to 39% of their male counterparts. Also, again, looking at access to formal financial services, women are lagging behind. We have the data saying that 59% of women adults who are formally included compared to 70% men. And again, if you put in other indicators, checking in demographics, rural, urban, geopolitical zone, we see that the gap even widens further, right? Looking at
Norah, let me interrupt you there. And there's okay. So much data that we could reel off, but I think that the general picture is that women are consistently, there's a gap between men and women in terms of access to all of these across the different things. There's just that gender gap. And are you able to speak to some of the insights as to why, why is this something that you've seen as a trend? Is it increasing? Is it reducing over the course of the A2F surveys?
Thank you, Chinasa. So it's a trend that's unfortunately increasing, right? Mm-hmm. It appears not to be getting any better. I came across a research some days back, and there was a stipulation about Nigeria being able to close the gender gap in nothing less than 100 years. So it now calls for, are we ready to? Do we really want to wait that long, or are we ready to, take the bull by the horn and do what we need to do to.
You know what? That's a perfect place. I totally agree with you. 100 years is a very long time. Seems just a bit like, why 100 years? What are those underlying issues that can be resolved in a shorter time frame? And I'd like Yetunde to come in here and just speak from her experience with being involved in women's economic empowerment, policy dialogues, your experience with different initiatives. So we're seeing that the gender gap is increasing, and we've been talking about this issue for a while now. There's International Women's Day every year, and it's not changing, well, at least for Nigeria, as Norah has highlighted. Yetunde, please share your thoughts.
Thank you very much, Chinasa. So you were asking about my experience in terms of addressing the gaps and advancing gender equality that women face. So
yes, and why, I'm sorry, and one more thing. Why, as we're doing all this work, is the gap widening? What are the peculiar issues?
Oh, all right. Thank you very much. So maybe I'll just first of all give like a brief background on the project I currently work on, which has now been scaled up to a national program. And I think when you were talking, Chinasa, I noted some things down. I noted the fact that what Inclusion for All does, and one of the things you mentioned was around the multi-sectoral approach and also working with the vulnerable population. And, even looking at the statistics that my other co-panelists reeled out, you see that women are more disproportionately affected. And that was what informed the project called the Nigeria for Women Project. The Nigeria for Women Project is actually a project that is being implemented by the federal government of Nigeria and is being supported by the World Bank. And the project actually understands, and it's now being scaled up to a national program. And the project understands, and the government also recognizes that to address issues around women, a multi-dimensional approach needs to happen to be able to overcome the main institutional and market failures that are limiting women's economic outcomes in Nigeria. And I think that's where your question around, why do we continue to have the gap? And one of the things we realize is that a woman is not just a woman on her own. She has a family, she has her friends, she has her husband, she has her children, she has the community, she has the society, she has the state, she has the federal government, which all of them play a very important decision. And she also has herself in terms of agency, in terms of her having the knowledge and all that. And I think my co-panelist also talked about the financial literacy. So if you look at the skills, the resources, the institutions, women generally just are disproportionately affected. And that is why the Nigeria for Women project is looking at various interventions. So the first thing, before you even say you want to empower a woman, gone are the days where you say, oh, in terms of financial inclusion, you just throw money at the problem and you give her 10,000 and you believe that she'll just go and set up a business, or you give her a machine. The first thing is to look at building social capital and influencing social norms. And also, one of the things the project has done is to successfully develop and test what is called the Women Affinity Group. So you understand that when women come together, they are a more formidable force. They have more agency. They are taught, they are given different trainings around financial literacy, gender and life skills. But we understand that in that community, if women are not allowed to work, or if a husband believes that she's not supposed to work, and what we normally see is that the work that they would even say, okay, maybe this woman can do, let me call her maybe Laraba or Iyabo, is something that does not take her from her quote and unquote primary responsibility, that is taking care of the home. So they are happy if she's, doing some petty trading in front of the house. But that woman will never be able to break the cycle of poverty. That woman will never move from subsistence level if she's not in the market, if she's not accessing bigger markets, if she's not be able to have, if she's not able to get access to funding. And as we know, the access to credit for women is very bad. A lot of women don't even know about financial products. Another thing, and I think what I will be doing is just to relate it to my project and what we've seen, even in terms of getting the women to join, the women affinity groups, which is a form of self-help group. There was a lot of distrust in the government. A lot of women have been beaten by a lot of these sharp lenders, where they tell them that they're going to lend to them at 10%, and they don't know that it's not 10% for a year, but it's 10% every month. These women run into debt. These women, because they don't understand financial literacy, they don't understand budgeting, they don't understand financial products. Those are some of the challenges that they face. Then women also have less disposable income, meaning that they don't have collateral. And my co-panelist, I feel like she even said a lot of things that I wanted to say. They don't have land. They don't have anything that will serve as, let's say, security. They don't have credit history. Then a lot of women are employed in the informal sector. A lot of them, you find out that they are doing a lot of menial jobs, or they are doing a lot of trading. Another key important thing is the digital financial services, which has, it's becoming important a lot. And we talked about the mobile phone penetration, which by disaggregating the data, you even looked at how many own Android or smartphones, how many of them own feature phones. Some of them, you even find out that the phones, they might have the phone, but it's with their son or it's with their husband. We actually work in a community in a particular state in Nigeria where women are not allowed to own phones. If you have a phone and you marry into that, and when I heard that story, I was like, in
2020. 24.
As at the time where we're in play, I think it was 2020 or 2022. If you are marrying into that community, as you are entering the community, you submit your phone. As in, that was the rule. It was until the project got in and had to. Yes. So that's where the whole social norms, advocacy, having project champions, religious leaders, traditional leaders, those are some of the things that are helping us. And I would like to say here, because I know that I've, really talked, and one of the, I know Sinasa will want me to answer is around why is this gap, why is it widening? As long as we do not take the multi-sectoral approach, the gap will continue to widen. As long as we do not look at the institutions that the women have to deal with, along with the increased cost of living. So, for example, women, most of the time, they manage the household budget and all that, but they do not have enough resources to cover the basic needs. But a lot of those things are changing right now. In terms of the journey,
but
I think
fast enough.
What did you say?
I said, a lot of things are changing, but clearly not fast enough with the 100-year projection that Norah talked about.
Yes, and today, interestingly, I was even in a meeting with the gender leader of the World Bank, and they are looking at how to accelerate, and I was like, how does accelerate mean? Is it by 5%? Is it by 10%? But I think that
good
for
question.
us, the message for us in this meeting today is that yes, we are seeing that the divide may be getting worse, but I don't think we should give up. Imagine if we're not even doing anything at all. But by working and having these type of conversations, having this type of dialogues, looking at how we can support both the policy and the institutional support through like the Women Economic Empowerment Policy, those are some of the things that will help us address the gender gap in financial access to women so that we reduce the disproportion. Thank you, and over.
Thank you so much, Yetunde. That was such a rich answer. And, there's so many things you touched on. In fact, I was trying to take notes. One of the things that stood out for me was, the need to, first of all, work collaboratively. It's not one institution. It's not one actor. It's everybody coming together. And it's sad that, women are faced with multiple barriers from different areas, basically. And so until all those people come together, or at least if everybody does what they're supposed to do in their area, women will continue to face this gap. And you also touched on DFS, Digital Financial Services. And I thought it was a perfect point to also segue into Amina's question, because she works with the fintech, which is, again, trying to use technology and innovation to enhance, women's access, I think, at least as part of the vulnerable population. So, I'm going to bring you up now to speak about your work at Teasy and some of the points that Norah and Yetunde have raised about the barriers to women's inclusion, especially around digital financial services, and how your organization is working to overcome those barriers.
Okay, yeah. So this is it. I'm going to be talking more on my experience in the field. So forgive me if I sound a bit informal. But what I've noticed, right?
Speak freely. Mm-hmm.
And this is what I've noticed, especially my project has always been centered on rural women. We've paid funds to to thousands of women, but our focus has been on rural women that have absolutely no access to financial services, women that are way below the poverty line, women that their main concern has always been their family, their kids, their husbands, their community. So we provide funds for them, or rather, the federal government or the clients pay these funds through our system. And what I've come to realize is, yes, you can use the conventional mobile banking, digital wallets where they can have access to make payments, receive funds and whatnot. But in reality, when they receive these funds, does it actually help, right? You can provide the platform to get the funds, but do the funds make a difference, right? In my opinion, I feel regularly assessing the effectiveness of the intervention itself and incorporating feedback from these women is essential for continuous improvement and ensuring that the technology-enabled financial services remain relevant and impactful. Another innovation that we used in the past is biometric identification, for instance. We've utilized biometric identification systems which improve security and accessibility to financial services. Now, the idea of using that is because most of these women don't have any formal identification. Like, the highest they've had, I think, was like voter's card or something like that. So what the clients do is they create a data for them or buy data for them that they can use for identification, and we use that to create QR codes. And we give these women these cards. They're simple, they're easy. The only thing we need to provide is like a picture. So we know that these funds are going to them. Because most of them, I've had issues where their husbands will come in their place to collect it, or their co-wives, or their sons, or their stepsons. So it's always like, there's always a family drama that prevents these women from accessing this money. So like I said, you can build in the system. Our company is basically building financial services for the paid and the ones that are not financially included. But does this money really help them? Do these funds actually make a difference in their lives? I think this is what we need to concentrate on. And yes, I want them to be big. I want them to be entrepreneurs. I want them to have their businesses. But let's start with the basic. can we have them have these funds and save them for their kids' school fees, for their hospital bills, things like, let's start simple. They're rural women. I mean, their needs are usually very simple. So that's my take.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Amina. As you were speaking, I'm not sure if you touched on it. So Yetunde had talked about some of these women not even having, and I don't know if it was Norah that mentioned it in her data insights as well, in terms of access to phones and then being able to use it. Do you find that you need to collaborate with other actors or parties to do that education, or is that part of your process for onboarding?
Okay, so like I said, the first thing we need to do, or we've always done, was to train these women, was for us to make these women see themselves worthy of getting these funds, right? Worthy of getting this help. Now, they may not have, in the past, most of them didn't have phones, but the truth is, in the areas we've been to, even the men didn't have phones, right? Because they were in locations where there were mobile networks around that area. There was no infrastructure built to support that product. So what we did was create a simple payment solution that they can use to access these funds. I've paid funds to people in an offline location, but that was mostly because I had agents that could use that platform, go into the field, pay these women, come out and then sync the paid data to our own servers. Like I said, we worked with what we have. We could do a disbursement in a particular state, but different local governments can have different standard operating procedure for how they are being paid. So like I said, the most important thing is to actually boost the morale of these women and show them that they're worthy to get this kind of services. So yes, it's very important to have financial literacy and training, if you will, on what you think. Yeah.
Thank you, Amina. I'm going to come back to you, Norah, and just on the back of Amina's answer and some of the stories she shared and experiences from the survey and data insights. I know there are conversations around women's attitudes, and can you corroborate some of what Amina has said and Yetunde has said about women's access and their limitations or general attitudes, or some of the things that appear to be incongruent with some of our thoughts around women's access?
All right, thank you so much, Chinasa. From the data, I think one key factor to mention would be the fact that women are more or are less economically active when compared to men. And that could either be by choice or by force, right? So again, the data says compared to there's like 30% of Nigerian female adults who are dependent, like they're not doing anything, basically just relying on family and friends, for financial and other related support. So is it possible for us to, is there a way we can, work with these people, at least for those who it's by force, hopefully, try to change their mindsets, or those around them, because for some of them, they also need permission. So constraining norms also come in, right? They need permission from the men in their lives to be able to work. So is it possible we are able to address those norms, speak to the men community leaders, respectable people in those communities, to see if there's a way we can change their mindsets and beliefs so that they can, begin to support the women in their communities to become more economically active, right? Another one would be the fact that we have less women, again, participating in the informal economy. Most women play in the informal sector, and because of that, there are higher chances, right, that they would want to adopt and use informal financial mechanisms. And again, is it possible for, and again, the way the Nigerian financial system is structured, are we actually ready to work with or to accept the informal sector? That's another question, right? Because within the informal sector, there are a lot of, there are no barriers per se, right? But we see these barriers coming up, and most times when, you go to meet them to want to come on board them, they don't have the documentation. They don't have what you're asking them for. Yeah. So, I think my colleagues have mentioned a lot of. Okay, another thing I want to talk about will be the fact that the products that we even have that are available to the women, are they actually meeting their needs? Are they actually valuable to them? Most times what we see is a copy and paste approach where one financial institution just thinks that, okay, this product will work, and another just picks it up, right, without proper research, and just deploys it and possibly just make it color pink and say it would appeal to the women. Yeah, women in Nigeria are not a homogeneous group. A woman in the north is quite different from a woman in the south.
Absolutely.
A woman in Jos is quite different from a woman in Kano, right? So if we can have products that speak to them, right, addressing their peculiarities, addressing their needs, we can see them come on board.
Thank you so much, Norah. That was quite insightful and interesting. When you talk about women's economic activities and also some of the limitations that they have, I'm just wondering, is this, and I'm going to come to you Yetunde, this is all hinged on agency, right? The women having that agency, activating it to participate and be able to do things themselves. So it's almost like women are self-sabotaging. So we're advocating for these groups of people, but their mindset limitations or based on sociocultural norms that won't let them go overcome that self-limiting barrier, if you like. And as with the programs that you've done, how do you try to address that realistically? Is it even realistic to expect a mindset change, or do we find creative ways of circumventing them? Whilst we're trying to wait for Yetunde, if the audience, if you have any comments, I think you can share them on our pinned post. There's a way that you can interact, because you can't interact directly with this live except to allow you to speak. So you can post your questions or comments on the pinned post on this page. Okay, Amina, let me just come to you. So you've heard what Norah said. Again, it's talking about agency and just women being able to find their ability to make decisions. In your experience, and even in terms of organizations designing products that are fit for purpose, that actually meet the needs of the women, does your organization take that woman-centric approach in designing products? Do you feel that you do enough of that, or you could do better?
No, you could definitely do better. Anyone that says they have done the best for women at this point, I think it's overstating it. What I feel, right, is to have, or rather what we've done in the past, is to have like a data collection and research. Because I feel that collecting gender disaggregated data and conducting research to really understand the specific barriers and challenges faced by these women in accessing the financial services, and the economic opportunities. These information can actually inform evidence-based policies and interventions. One of the key things for us, right, because we're licensed by the CBN, most of what we do obviously has to be within the regulatory framework of what the CBN has put in place.
But do you find that limiting?
Because we're working within the CBN regulatory framework, of course, our hands are tied. But the thing is, we have to give the CBN a little bit of room, because this is something new. Mobile banking is not really accepted in this country like it is in places like Kenya.
How new? It's not that new. When you say new, we've been doing this for how? So.
No, we've been doing it for 12 years. But trust me, go to the rural areas who the people were supposed to serve, and they don't really know it.
Yeah.
You understand? So it is new for them.
Correct.
I'm not talking about you and I. You and I, of course, we know it. We're online.
You're right.
But for them, do they know that they can use their mobile phones to have access to financial services? I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
This is the biggest limitations that we have, not understanding the full capacity of what your mobile phone can do. If I give my 3-year-old or my 10-year-old an iPhone now, they would do wonders with it, irrespective of their age, because they know what that device can do for them.
They're digital natives.
Exactly. But give a woman a phone, the only thing she would use is to call and check in on her kids. She doesn't.
A woman in the rural area, or a woman generally?
Yes. No, a woman no, I'm talking about the woman, the people we're talking about right now, the people that I'm serving, rural women.
Okay.
Give her a phone and she won't really understand the full potential of what she can do with the phone unless you tell her, unless you teach her, unless you educate her. That's the point I'm trying to make. Now,
I'm going to interrupt. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you there because you've highlighted something. And when you talk about give a woman a phone and all she'll do is make a call with it, is there also a possibility that maybe that's all she really just wants it for? To show her the full functionality of the phone and what she can do with it. Is it in alignment with her basic needs? Because again, if I don't need it, then why do I need to know it? And this is me just playing the devil's advocate.
But what's the point in having something that you can't use the full potential? China, so we're still, that's why we're stuck. That's why we're not moving forward. Because these women don't understand that there is life outside their immediate area. Do you understand? Exactly. So yes, it's important for us to teach them. If they don't know it, then they would never know it. When they say ignorance is bliss. But just because ignorance is bliss doesn't mean that it's a good thing.
I agree. And I will stop you there. I'm going to move to Yetunde because that was the question I was asking about, because this is essentially a mindset thing as well. Yetunde, talking about agency mindset, Norah talked about the importance of shifting mindsets and overcoming social-cultural norms or even sort of changing them. I personally believe that these are very ambitious objectives, not impossible, but also a long-term game. And if we were to sort of get the kinds of results we want in the short term, then we need to find other ways as opposed to trying to change mindsets. Would you agree? And in terms of your experience, is this true? So this is open to you, Norah or Amina.
Okay. All right. Let me just quickly say that it is necessary and it is doable. We need to, if we want to see the change that we need, then we need to start doing something regarding changing mindsets. Obviously, we've tried to walk around it and we haven't gotten any progress. They say it's only a mad person that keeps doing the same thing over and over and will be expecting a different result. So I think we need to start. How we need to start is another question. Yeah, but I think we need to, and it's doable.
I agree. Amina, your thoughts? Do you agree with Norah?
Yes, I do, absolutely. Especially her definition of insanity, doing something over and over again. It's the same thing I was saying earlier. We can't just keep saying this is normal and then still expect different outcomes, right? We have to change the narrative. We have to change what really happens in the field and off the field. And we have to make the policy makers understand. Because, the thing is there are so many stakeholders into this entire cycle. I'm in the field. I'll give an example in my office right now. My managing director is in the office. My board of directors are in their offices and whatnot. And they make changes. They make the policies. But I am in the field and I see things differently. And for that reason, whenever there is a major decision to be made, I have to be involved. Myself and the entire team have to be involved because we see what happens on the ground. So yes, we have to change the narrative.
Fantastic. I like the analogy that you use because, again, if they're all the way in their offices making these important decisions and you don't have a voice from the field who understands the lived experiences of these people, how do you then, design policies that actually meet their needs or at least addresses their challenges? You're absolutely right. I don't know if we have Yetunde, if she's still able to join us, but we have about 15 minutes to the end of this session and would like to invite our audience members to have an interactive session with us. So if there's anybody listening, if you can just raise your hand, and I can allow you speak if you have questions or comments or any contributions. In fact, to this conversation, we're very happy to hear you. Hello, Zayed. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. And yes, please go ahead. Question or contribution or comments?
Well, contribution and the question. Or comment rather and the question. Okay. Thank you very much for a wonderful episode. Very enriching.
Thank you.
What I was wondering was, I don't know if the panelists, and based on their experiences, have they found any evidence that shows that increased the amount of women that are working as agents for especially agency banking? The more women we have as agents in the field, does that generally improve the level of financial access for the women in that area in general, or there is no such evidence at all? Thank you. I don't know if the question is clear. I can repeat it if necessary.
Yeah, it's clear, Zed. Thank you very much. It is. Yes, and I think I'll let Amina address that based on her experience with work. Thank you, Zed.
Yes. Okay, so now the thing is this. We have the rural women and then the urban ones. Now, I can say for a certain degree of certainty that there are more female agents in the urban areas. The rural ones have not yet accepted it, and I think it still goes back to the social and cultural norms in that area. But I feel that the few that have accepted it, or the few that are integrated with people that are doing it, for instance, if you have a son, or if your husband or brother or someone is doing that agency business, you tend to be involved in it, and you tend to make the women around you accept it. So yes, I agree. But for now, I think it's a bit stagnant because there's really no, the women in the agency banking is almost non-existent. That's just the truth. Because for you to be an agent in the field, especially in those areas, there's a certain level of risk attached to it, right? Those areas are usually not secured. They have armed robbery, bandits, and whatnot. And the idea of working with cash, because everyone knows that an agent, a mobile banking agent, has cash around with them, it's usually not safe. And then the working hours as well. Some agents have to work from morning till evening or night. And these women don't have the luxury of doing that because they need to get home to feed their family. They have domestic chores at home. So we really don't have that much female agents in the rural areas. No, I don't think I've seen a handful of them ever. But that's my own experience.
Thank you, Amina. And you know what? When you started to speak about your experience, I also thought about it. We're talking about the same women. So the women that will serve the poor women in these rural communities are also facing the same challenges. They need to get permission from their husbands to go and actively engage in that kind of work, right?
Absolutely.
So, do you understand? It's like a catch-22 cycle. Very interesting. Norah, do you have any comments on that? I know I have a question from the comment side.
Yes, I think I totally agree with Amina. However, I was just trying to remember. I know that I think in 2020, EFINA, we conducted a survey, an agent banking landscape survey, just trying to understand, this same issue, male agents, female agents, who's doing more, who can bring the impact we need in, getting the underserved and reaching the underserved and the underbanked. We have that data on our website, and I think there's some evidence that points out to the fact that when, the female agents are engaged, or when you compare the male and female agents, we see the female agents having more traction and having more impact. But again, there's still a lot of issues, like Amina mentioned, that approval to even be able to be an agent and whatnot. Also there's a framework that was released by the CBN, I think that was last year, on improving female agent banking as well. But I'm not so sure how well we're doing with implementing that. But definitely I think there's impact when female agents are in the business. They tend to have that. They tend to have potential really to reach the underserved and the underbanked. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Norah. So somebody is asking, and I'll open this question is to anybody that wants to take it. So my question is to the rural women from your experience. Has there been a show of interest from women themselves, seeing that most may be fine the way they are, even though you educate them on the need to be financially included?
All right. Thank you very much. So I think I'll touch on two angles. So in terms of interest, I think one thing I've noticed, and on the Nigeria for Women project, we actually work with women, we call them the missing middle, that with one life event, they can just get tipped into poverty. They are not the very poor, but they are very vulnerable and they are involved in an economic activity. And we realize that these women, a lot of them are even more intelligent than that we give them credit for. They understand budgeting, they understand saving, they've run a business. And we actually found out that some are very, very aspirational. And for example, in Ogun State, we actually have a group of women that actually, one of their group dream, what they aspire to do is to open a microfinance bank. They were able to accumulate savings. They were able to interloan among themselves. They charged a service charge. And I think at the end of the day, they were able to save over 2 million. And they were like, look, I've been going to all these money lenders that do sharp practices, all the sharks, and I'm able to loan when I need money, when I want to do my business. I don't have to get at high interest rates. So we found women like that. But on the other spectrum also, we've actually seen women that will tell you that, we are very risk averse. We just want to be saving. We want to see our money. Some of them don't even take loans. And I think which is fine. So you actually find, different type of women that come together depending on their aspiration. But a lot of them don't just have basic needs. And actually on about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we actually did a focus group discussion, across our 6 implementing states. And some of them will tell you that, look, we want to digitize our savings. So what we do is like a savings and credit. Some call it VSLA. It's an adaptation, but I call it VSLA Pro Max, because apart from them saving together and interloaning, they also get layered on different trainings and all that. And you will find out that a lot of these women will say, yes, we're interested in getting financial products. We're interested in digitizing our savings. Some will say, oh, no, I don't want anything that has to do with bank for now. I want to be able to see my money when we are saving. But you find out that a lot of these women, they fall between the spectrum of, okay, let me just be able to save. Some of them also are saying, look, this money we are interloaning amongst ourselves is not enough. We need that injection. We need that financial assistance. We need linkage to formal financial institutions to be able to carry on. Some of them will say, yes, we think it's important that we digitize so that we can see all our records, so that the bank can also see our records and make sure that we are credit worthy. So I think what we see is actually a spectrum of women that range from the basic needs to the ones that want to be linked to the ones that also want to be digitized. Thank you, and over.
Fantastic. Thank you, Yetunde. Before you go and before you drop off because of your internet, I was just going to say, which would you say is the highest group in terms of the spectrum? So would you say there are more women who are willing to learn more and just basically be empowered, or it's more around the basic needs side of the spectrum?
I think women want more. It's not just
simply put,
because the truth is that after 1 year that so the project supports for a year, and after that they become self-sustaining. But I mentioned something in the beginning. How much can we continue to save amongst ourselves if we do not get access to formal credit? I think that would be the game changer for these women. But as someone in one of my colleagues said, I think it was Amina, understanding the product, making specific products, not just putting pink and saying pink accounts. I think that thing makes me so sad when I don't even like pink. Pink, yes, we've developed one product from Yetunde in Ogun. Her needs will even be different from Iyabo in Ogun, in another LGA in Ogun State, because you will find out that in maybe Yewa, they don't have any bank. So you understand where you are starting from. But maybe in Abeokuta North, she already has banks. So you understand, the different needs and how it's important to contextualize. But I will tell you, based on our project that we've worked with over 400,000 women that have formed 22,000 women affinity groups between 15 to 25 women, they definitely want to move to the next level. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Ine, you're welcome to ask your question or make your contribution.
Hi. I just wanted to make a contribution to the point that Yetunde has made and to the initial question that was asked about whether or not, these women are fine the way they are. And I think sometimes when we talk about women empowerment and we talk about, increased access and all of these things, I think we can also be patronizing in a sense. And that's kind of what Yetunde was talking about pink accounts, a lot of these things that they're not real, right? The real issue is helping women actually understand the value of these products. So I think sometimes you say, okay, financial inclusion is good for you. Okay, but how? Why? And the other day on the radio, I was listening to, I think it was an ad for market insurance, and they kind of went around markets and were saying, do you want insurance? Do you have insurance? All of them were saying no, they don't need it. But then after explaining to them why insurance was valuable for them as market women, they all were like, oh, okay, this is a good idea. I would actually like insurance. And I think when we're talking about educating people, we should think about it from a holistic perspective as a form of education that helps them understand the why behind whatever it is we're trying to push towards people, so that they can be in the position to say effectively, okay, I understand that a bank account and access to savings and all of these things, I understand what it is, but I have now chosen to not want it. But most people are rational. Most people, if they see the benefit in something, not just for themselves, but for their family and their community, they always want a better option. Human beings want what is better for them. And so I think when we think about women, rural women, as opposed as real complex beings with thoughts, motivations, ideas, dreams, all of these things, then we stop thinking about, I know they're just happy, selling gala on the streets or whatever. We're thinking about actually this woman who might be selling akara, she probably wants to have a bigger business. I mean, we recently did a video on exclusion, and exclusion has a face. And it was interesting to see the responses from some of the women that we got, and them saying things like, for my job, I make baskets that I weave, and I don't have a bank account. If I did, I would try and expand my business. Like, you see, and I think sometimes you don't think that, like, people who are in rural communities are thinking this broadly, but of course they are. They're human beings. And so I think that's just generally my comment / addition is that women, rural women, they're ultimately human beings who have broad ambitions, and we must cater to those ambitions if we're actually trying to and help them see, and not just help them see. We had a question earlier about the point of how do we educate people and change culture. Also showing men who are in their lives and their families that, okay, actually, a woman being empowered is better for us as a whole. It's better for our community as a whole, And I think that those are the ways that we can actually see that closing.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Great contribution, Ine. Thank you so much. We could say a lot more, and talking about women, it's just never an exhaustive conversation. Even as we were talking, there's so many more questions. I wanted Yetunde to address the question that Zayed asked about the effectiveness of, using female agents to onboard females in these communities, and based on her experience, but we'll not be able to touch on that. But nonetheless, I think that what's clear is that there's still a lot of work to be done. We still all need to work together, but more primarily, or what's more important that I find is, how do we help these women, especially the ones that we care about in rural communities? How do we make them see the value? How do we help them activate that agency to participate and basically want to do more with their lives, given the resources and tools that they have access to? And the second part, as Nia mentioned, is beyond trying to change the cultural norms, how do we get the men to see it as well? Because I think when I think of circumventing it, and based on some of the projects that have been done, I know the conditional cash transfer project in Kaduna State, when they were trying to get the women as the primary caregivers to receive the funds and basically get their ID, they had to go through the male head of those homes to get their approval. And maybe that's what we need to do, to get the men on board, to see the value proposition beyond the woman, to see it for the entire family and to see their contribution to the community. You know, they talk about women being the largest contributor to food productions. Over 70% of the food that we eat is produced by women globally. And then you find that in Nigeria, women are the ones that are unlikely to have access to land. All they want to do is feed their family, but they can actually do a lot more. They can feed the society, they can feed their community, family, community, the nation. We need women. And so this conversation isn't just one of those conversations. And like Yetunde had mentioned, we need to keep talking about this until we start to see the gap narrowing. Widening isn't the direction we want to see it going. And that seems to be what's happening. So thank you very much for a very engaging and great conversation. And at this point, I think that if my guests have any, or panelists have anything to say in 5 seconds each or 10 seconds, just give your last words and then we can end the session. So Norah, do you have anything to say to close this conversation?
For me, it would just be re-echoing what you said. Let's keep talking about it. Let's keep doing something. We'll get there. Hopefully.
Fantastic.
Someday.
Awesome. Amina?
In my opinion, I don't think we should go big. Simple solutions, simple tasks, one step at a time. And everything will work itself out. Yeah.
Fantastic. I like that. And Yetunde, to you finally.
Thank you very much. What I just want to say is that investing in women is not just the right thing to do, but it's the smart thing to do. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I think that's the perfect note to end. It's not the right thing to do. It's the smart thing to do. So if you're hearing this, please inspire women's inclusion. It's the smart thing to do. Thank you very much for coming to this Inclusion for All Dialogues.